Jake Morrison was not supposed to be at the Unity Gala. He was just a simple cargo pilot who flew supplies between Earth colonies and alien trading stations. His job was not exciting. He moved boxes from one place to another, and that was all. But 3 days ago, his shipment of medical supplies had arrived early at Station Viridian. The station administrator was so happy that he invited all the human crew members to attend the biggest party of the year. So there Jake was, standing in a borrowed formal jacket that did not quite fit him, holding a drink that glowed a soft blue color. He had no idea what was in the drink. It tasted like honey mixed with something he could not name. Around him, thousands of aliens from hundreds of different species talked and laughed and danced. The grand ballroom was the most beautiful place Jake had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers floated in the air without any wires holding them up. They cast rainbow lights across the white marble floor. The ceiling was made of glass, and through it, Jake could see a million stars shining in the darkness of space. He felt completely out of place. Back home in Nebraska, Jake was the kind of guy who talked to everyone at the local bar. He knew all his neighbors. He helped old Mrs. Patterson carry her groceries every Sunday. But here, surrounded by beings who had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves, he felt very small. Jake finished his drink and looked around the room. There were tall aliens with 4 arms. There were short aliens covered in soft fur. There were aliens made of what looked like living metal, and aliens that seemed to be mostly light and energy. All of them were talking in groups, making deals, building friendships that would last for centuries. And then Jake saw her. She stood alone by the big observation window at the far end of the ballroom. Her skin was a beautiful silver blue color, and it seemed to glow softly under the starlight. Her hair was white like fresh snow, and it moved slowly even though there was no wind, like it was floating in water. She wore a simple dark dress, nothing fancy or decorated. Her eyes, when Jake looked at them, were deep violet, the color of the sky just after sunset. But what Jake noticed most was how sad she looked. She stood there watching the stars. And even though she was surrounded by thousands of people at the biggest party in the sector, she looked completely alone. Jake knew that look. He had seen it on his own face in the mirror after his father died, and again after his girlfriend left him for a mining engineer on Mars. The orchestra, if you could call it that, began to play something new. The music was strange and beautiful, made by instruments Jake had never seen before. But the rhythm was familiar. It sounded almost like a waltz, the kind of dance his mother had taught him in their kitchen back when he was just a boy. Jake did not think too hard about what he did next. He just walked across the ballroom, past groups of important-looking aliens, past servers carrying trays of glowing food, past guards in shiny armor. He walked right up to the sad woman by the window. She turned to look at him. Up close, she was even more beautiful. There were small patterns on her skin, like tiny stars arranged in shapes he did not recognize. Her violet eyes were wide with surprise. "You look like you could use a dance partner," Jake said with a friendly smile. The woman stared at him for a long moment. Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to say something but could not find the words. "You wish to dance with me?" she finally asked. Her voice was soft and musical, like wind chimes on a summer evening. "If you want to, of course," Jake said. "I should warn you, though, I am not very good at it. My mother tried to teach me, but I kept stepping on her feet." Something changed in the woman's face. The surprise slowly turned into something else. Interest, maybe. Or curiosity. "You do not know who I am," she said. It was not a question. Jake shrugged. "I know you are standing alone at a party, and I know that no one should have to be alone when there is music playing. That is enough for me." She studied him with those deep violet eyes. Jake felt like she was looking right into his soul, reading every thought he had ever had. It was a little scary, but he did not look away. "Very well," she said finally. A small smile appeared on her lips, the first smile Jake had seen on her face. "I would like that very much." They walked together to the dance floor. Jake could feel eyes on them, but he did not pay attention. He was too focused on trying not to trip over his own feet. The music was different from what he was used to, and the rhythm kept changing in ways he did not expect. But she was patient with him. She put one hand on his shoulder and took his other hand in hers. Her skin was cool to the touch, like smooth stone that had been sitting in shade. She guided him gently, and soon they were moving together in something that almost looked like they knew what they were doing. "I am Jake," he said as they danced. "Jake Morrison. I am from Earth." "I know what you are," she replied. "Humans are still quite rare in this part of the galaxy. You are only the third one I have ever met." "Really?" "Well, I hope the first two made a good impression." They were diplomats. Very formal, very careful with their words. She tilted her head slightly. "You are different. I am just a cargo pilot. I move boxes from one place to another. Not a lot of formal training required for that." "A cargo pilot," she repeated, like she was tasting the words. "And yet, here you are, at the Unity Gala, asking strange women to dance." "My shipment came in early. Got lucky, I guess." Jake smiled. "So, what about you? What brings you to a fancy party like this?" She was quiet for a moment. The music swelled around them, and Jake noticed that other couples were giving them a lot of space on the dance floor. He wondered if he was doing something wrong. "I came here to escape," she said softly. "If only for a night. Escape from what?" "From everything. From duty. From expectations. From being watched every moment of every day." She looked up at him with those violet eyes. "Do you know what it is like to be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone?" Jake nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I do." They danced through 3 more songs. They talked about small things and big things. Jake told her about Nebraska, about the wide open sky and the fields of wheat that stretched all the way to the horizon. He told her about his mother's cooking and his father's old pickup truck and the way the stars looked from his backyard on clear summer nights. She listened with real interest, asking questions that nobody had ever asked him before. She wanted to know what wheat tasted like, and why humans kept dogs as pets, and what rain felt like on skin. Jake answered every question, happy to share his world with someone who actually wanted to hear about it. "I am Valeth," she told him during a slow song. "It is nice to meet you, Jake Morrison from Earth." "Nice to meet you too, Valeth." When the music finally stopped, Jake realized that the room had gone very quiet. He looked up and saw that hundreds of eyes were fixed on them. Aliens of every species were staring at him and Valeth. Many of them looked shocked. Some looked angry. A few looked scared. "Did I do something wrong?" Jake whispered. Before Valeth could answer, a tall alien in ceremonial armor walked toward them. He was Valorian, like Valeth, with the same silver-blue skin. But where she looked gentle, he looked hard and dangerous. He stopped in front of them and dropped to one knee. "Your Imperial Highness," he said in a deep voice. "Your father is looking for you." Jake blinked. "Imperial Highness?" Valeth closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, the sadness had returned. "Jake Morrison from Earth, I am sorry. I should have told you." "Who aid you?" "I am Valeth Siren Kale, Crown Princess of the Valorian Sovereignty, heir to the Eternal Throne, future ruler of 400 billion souls." Jake stared at her. Then he looked at the kneeling guard. Then he looked at all the people staring at them. Then he looked back at Valeth. "Well," he said slowly, "that explains why everyone is staring." Valeth laughed. It was a sad laugh, but it was real. "You are not afraid?" Should I be? Most people are terrified of me. Jake thought about it for a moment. You know what? I danced with a princess tonight. My mother would be so proud. Whatever happens next, that is pretty cool. Vela smiled at him one last time. Then the guards surrounded her and led her away toward a golden door at the far end of the ballroom. She looked back once, her violet eyes meeting his across the crowd. Then she was gone, and Jake Morrison stood alone on the dance floor, wondering what in the world had just happened. Jake woke up in a cell. It was not a bad cell as far as cells go. The bed was soft and comfortable. The walls were clean white. Someone had even brought him breakfast, which looked strange but smelled good. But there was no door, just a wall of glowing energy that hummed softly when Jake got too close to it. And outside that energy wall stood two guards in silver armor who had not moved or spoken since Jake had woken up. He sat on the bed and tried to remember how he had gotten here. After Valeth had been taken away, things had happened very fast. Guards had appeared from nowhere. Someone had put something cold against his neck, and then everything had gone dark. Now here he was in a cell on a space station because he had asked a girl to dance. This is not how I thought my week would go, Jake said out loud. The guards did not respond. About an hour later, the energy wall flickered and disappeared. A Valorian man walked into the cell. He was older than the guards, with silver hair and deep lines on his face. He wore robes of dark purple with gold symbols on them that Jake did not recognize. His eyes were cold and hard, like ice. I am Lord Counselor Thyon, the man said. His voice was sharp and cutting. I serve as chief advisor to the Emperor. Jake Morrison. I fly cargo ships. Thyon looked at Jake like he was something disgusting that had gotten stuck to the bottom of his shoe. Do you have any idea what you have done, human? I asked a woman to dance. Where I come from, that is considered polite. You touched the crown princess of the Valorian sovereignty without permission. You engaged her in conversation without a formal introduction. You danced with her in public, in front of representatives from 47 different nations. Thyrn's voice got colder with each sentence. You have caused a diplomatic incident that could take decades to repair. Jake stayed calm. He had dealt with angry customers before. He had dealt with pirates trying to steal his cargo. This was just another problem to solve. I did not know who she was, he said simply. She was standing alone, looking sad. I thought she might like some company. That is all. Ignorance is not an excuse. Our laws are very clear about contact with the royal family. Your laws, not my laws. I am from Earth. We do things differently there. Thyrn stepped closer. He was taller than Jake, and he used his height to try to seem scary. Let me explain something to you, human. The Valorian sovereignty is 12,000 years old. Your entire species has only been in space for a few hundred years. You are children playing in a garden that belongs to giants. And now, because of your foolishness, you may have started something that neither of our peoples can stop. Jake stood up from the bed. He was not as tall as Thyrn, but he did not look away. All I did was dance with someone who looked like she needed a friend. If that is enough to cause a war, then maybe the problem is not with me. Thyrn's face twisted with anger. He opened his mouth to say something harsh, but then the energy wall flickered again. Both of them turned to look. Princess Valeth walked into the cell. She was dressed differently now. Gone was the simple dark dress from the party. Now she wore robes of silver and white that seemed to be made of light itself. A crown of crystal sat on her head, glowing softly. She looked like what she was, royalty, power, something far beyond a simple cargo pilot from Nebraska, but her eyes were the same. Those deep violet eyes that had looked at Jake like he was a real person, not just a commoner to be ignored. Lord Counselor, she said. Her voice was different too. colder, more commanding. "Leave us." Thyron's face went pale. "Your Highness, I must object. This human is dangerous. Your father has given orders that he should be kept isolated until... I know what my father has ordered. I am giving you a different order. Leave us, now." For a moment, Thyron looked like he might argue, but then he bowed low and walked out of the cell. The guards followed him. The energy wall did not come back up. Valeth and Jake stood alone together, just like they had been at the party. But everything was different now. "I am sorry," Valeth said softly. The coldness left her voice. She sounded tired, sad. "This is my fault. I should have told you who I was right away." "Would that have changed anything?" Jake asked. "It would have changed everything. You would have been formal and distant. You would have been afraid to speak to me like a normal person. You would have treated me like everyone else treats me." She paused. "No one talks to me like you did, Jake. Not since my mother died 5 years ago. I am always surrounded by people who see only the crown, never the person wearing it." Jake thought about that. He thought about what it must be like to be watched every second of every day. To never be alone. To never have someone treat you like just another person at a party. "And last night?" he asked. "Last night was wonderful." A small smile appeared on her face. "For a few hours, I was not the crown princess. I was just Valeth, a woman at a party who met a strange man from a strange world, who told her stories about fields of wheat and something called Nebraska. It was the happiest I have been in years. So what happens now?" The smile faded. Valeth looked down at the floor. "Now, my father wants to meet you. The Emperor does not make requests, Jake. When he wants something, it happens. And I cannot protect you from what is coming. What is coming? I do not know. My father is very old and very wise, but he is also very proud. You touched me without permission. In our culture, that is a serious crime. The punishment can be anything from imprisonment to..." She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. "Death," Jake said quietly. "The punishment can be death." Valeth nodded. Her violet eyes were wet with tears. She was trying not to let fall. Jake took a deep breath. He thought about his mother back on Earth, who would be worried when he did not call her next week like he always did. He thought about his little cargo ship, sitting in the station dock, waiting for a pilot who might never come back. He thought about all the things he had wanted to do with his life, that he might never get to do now. But he did not regret what he had done. How could he? He had met someone wonderful. He had made her smile. He had given her one good night in a life full of duty and loneliness. That was worth something. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said. Valeth looked up at him. "Of course. That dance. Those few hours we spent together. Was it real? Or was I just a distraction? A way to escape for one night?" Valeth stepped closer. She took his hand in hers, just like she had when they were dancing. Her skin was cool and smooth, and her fingers fit perfectly between his. "It was real," she said. "More real than anything I have felt in years. You saw me, Jake. Not the title. Not the crown. Not the power. Just me. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how long I've waited for someone to look at me the way you did?" Jake squeezed her hand gently. "Then whatever happens next, I want you to know something. I do not regret it. I would do it all again. Even knowing who you are. Even knowing it might get me killed." A tear slipped down Valeth's cheek. She wiped it away quickly. "You are either very brave or very stupid," she said. "My mother always said I was a bit of both." Valeth laughed. It was a sad laugh, but it was real. "I like your mother. She would like you too. She always told me to find a nice girl and settle down. I do not think she meant a princess from another galaxy, but she would probably be okay with it." They stood there for a moment, holding hands in the small white cell. Outside, somewhere, an emperor was waiting. Guards were standing by. A fate was being decided. But for just this moment, it was just the two of them. "I have to go," Velith finally said. "My father is waiting. But I wanted you to know that I will do everything I can to help you. I will speak for you. I will fight for you. I will—" "It is okay," Jake said. "Just do what you can. Whatever happens, do not blame yourself." Velith looked at him for a long time. Then she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his cheek. The kiss was brief, barely more than a touch, but it sent warmth through Jake's entire body. "Goodbye, Jake Morrison from Earth," she whispered. "I will never forget you." Then she turned and walked out of the cell. The energy wall flickered back on behind her. Jake stood alone in the white room, touching the spot on his cheek where she had kissed him. Somewhere out there, an emperor was deciding his fate. Jake did not know what would happen next. But he knew one thing for certain. That dance had been worth it. Whatever came next, it had been worth it. The night before the trial, Jake did not sleep. He sat in a small room that they had given him to prepare. The walls were bare white. There was a simple bed, a table with water, and a window that looked out at the stars. They had given him white clothes to wear, simple and plain. They had taken everything else away. A Valorian priest had come to explain the trial of Valorous. It had been created thousands of years ago to test the worthiness of warriors and nobles. It had 3 stages. Each stage was designed to push the challenger to their limit and beyond. Many Valorians had attempted the trial over the centuries. Less than half had survived, and Jake was not Valorian. He was not a warrior. He was not a noble. He was just a cargo pilot from Nebraska who happened to ask the wrong woman to dance. As the first light of dawn appeared through the window, the door opened. Velith stepped inside Dodd. She was not wearing her formal robes. She wore simple clothes, like someone who had sneaked out of their room in the middle of the night. Her white hair was slightly messy. Her violet eyes were red from not sleeping. "You should not be here," Jake said. "I know." She sat down on the edge of his bed. "I do not care." They sat together in silence for a moment. Outside the window, the stars were slowly fading as light filled the sky. "The trial will kill you," Velith said quietly. "It was made for Valorians. We have different bodies than humans. We are stronger. We live longer. We can sense things that humans cannot. You do not have any of those advantages. I know. Then why are you not afraid?" Jake thought about the question. He was afraid. He was terrified. But there was something else too. Something that was stronger than the fear. "Because giving up is not really an option," he said. "If I refuse the trial, your Lord Counselor Thion gets what he wants. I die anyway, and you get blamed for causing a political problem. If I try the trial and fail, at least I went down fighting. And if I somehow survive," he shrugged, "then everything changes. You really think you can win? Honestly? No, but I'm gonna try anyway. That is what humans do. We try things that we probably should not try. We take chances that do not make sense. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it does not, but we always try." Velith reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cool and smooth, just like he remembered from their dance. "I wish I had met you under different circumstances," she said. "Me too. I would have liked to take you on a proper date. Maybe show you around Nebraska. The sunsets there are really something special. Tell me about them." So Jake did. He talked about sitting on the porch of his mother's house, watching the sky turn from blue to orange to pink to purple. He talked about the way the wheat fields glowed like gold in the fading light. He talked about the sound of crickets and the smell of fresh earth after rain. Velith listened with her eyes closed, like she was trying to picture everything he described. "It sounds beautiful," she said when he finished. "It is. I hope you get to see it someday." A bell rang somewhere in the palace. Dawn had officially arrived. The trial was about to begin. Valeth stood up. She leaned down and kissed Jake's forehead gently. "Come back to me," she whispered. Then she was gone. An hour later, Jake stood at the entrance to the trial chamber. The chamber was a massive dome filled with strange crystal formations. They pulsed with inner light, constantly moving and changing. The air smelled like electricity and something else that Jake could not name. High above, in a gallery of glass, Emperor Kalen sat watching. Beside him was Valeth, her face pale but determined. Lord Councillor Thawne stood nearby, looking very confident that Jake would not survive the next hour. A voice echoed through the chamber. "The trial of Valorous begins. There are 3 stages. Complete all 3, and you will be free. Fail any stage, and you will die. May the stars guide your path." The first stage was the maze of shadows, the crystal. Formations around Jake suddenly shifted and grew, creating walls that blocked his path in every direction. The light dimmed until Jake could barely see his own hands in front of his face. The maze was alive, constantly changing, designed to confuse and trap anyone who entered. Most Valorians could navigate the maze by sensing the vibrations in the crystal. They could feel which paths were real and which were illusions. Jake did not have that ability. He was completely blind, but he had something else. He had human stubbornness. Jake picked a direction and started walking. When walls appeared in front of him, he turned and tried another way. When the floor tilted to make him stumble, he got back up and kept moving. When the temperature dropped so low that his breath turned to fog, he wrapped his arms around himself and pushed forward. He tore strips from his white shirt and tied them to crystal formations as he passed, marking his path so he would not walk in circles. He counted his steps. He used every trick he had learned from years of navigating cargo ships through asteroid fields. 3 hours later, he stumbled out of the maze. The second stage was the Pool of Truth. A vast basin of liquid crystal filled the center of the chamber. It glowed with a soft silver light, and its surface was perfectly still. Jake knew what this was. The priest had explained it. The pool would show him his deepest fears, the things he was most afraid of, and force him to face them. Jake stepped into the pool. The liquid was warm, almost like bathwater. It rose up around him, covering his chest, his shoulders, his neck. And then the visions began. He saw his father on his deathbed, telling Jake that he was disappointed in him. He saw his old girlfriend, laughing at him, saying he would never amount to anything. He saw himself as a small child, afraid of the dark, crying for help that never came. He saw every failure of his life, every mistake, every time he had let someone down, every dream that had not come true, and he saw himself as he truly was. A small human in a vast universe of ancient civilizations. A nobody, a nothing, a speck of dust in an endless cosmos. Jake wanted to run. He wanted to scream. He wanted to give up and let the vision swallow him whole. But then he saw something else. He saw Valeth standing by the window, looking sad and alone. He saw himself walking toward her. He saw her smile when he asked her to dance. And he understood something important. Humans were small. Their lives were short. They were young and foolish and made mistakes all the time. But they were not worthless. They had something that all their smallness could not take away. They had the ability to see someone who was hurting and reach out to help. They had the courage to walk up to a stranger and offer kindness. They had the stubbornness to keep trying, even when everything seemed impossible. Jake opened his eyes. He was standing in the middle of the pool, and the liquid had become still. The visions had stopped. He had faced his fears, and he had not let them break him. He walked out of the pool. The third stage was the Guardian. It stood at the far end of the chamber, and it was the most terrifying thing Jake had ever seen. 12 feet tall, 6 arms. A body made of living crystal that shifted and reformed with every movement. Its face had no expression, no emotion, nothing that Jake could read or understand. The Guardian had been created by ancient Valorian warriors to be the ultimate test of combat skill. It was faster than any living creature, stronger than any machine. In thousands of years, it had never been defeated. Jake was not a warrior. He had no weapons, no training, no special abilities, but he was not going to quit. The Guardian attacked. Its first blow came so fast that Jake barely saw it moving. He threw himself to the side by pure instinct, feeling the wind of the attack pass inches from his face. The second blow caught him in the ribs. Pain exploded through his body as he flew across the chamber and hit the crystal wall. He tasted blood in his mouth. He got back up. The Guardian attacked again. Jake dodged one blow, blocked another with his arms, took a third to his shoulder that nearly knocked him unconscious. Blood ran from cuts on his face. His left eye was swelling shut. Every breath felt like fire in his chest. He got back up. Again and again. The Guardian struck him down. Again and again, Jake pulled himself to his feet. He could not win this fight. He knew that. The Guardian was too strong, too fast, too powerful. But giving up was not an option. In the gallery above, Emperor Kalen watched with an expression that was impossible to read. Valith gripped the railing so hard that her knuckles had turned white. Lord Councillor Thiam was smiling, certain that the next blow would be the last. Below, Jake faced the Guardian one more time. He could barely stand. His vision was blurred. His body was broken in a dozen different places, but he raised his fists. "Come on," he said through bloody lips. "I have got all day." The Guardian lunged. Jake did not try to dodge. Instead, at the last possible second, he threw himself forward. He slid under the Guardian's massive body, reaching up with both hands. His fingers found something warm and pulsing in the center of its chest, a crystal core. The heart of the machine. Jake grabbed it and pulled with everything he had left. The Guardian shattered. Crystal shards rained down around Jake as he lay on the floor of the chamber, broken and bleeding but alive. He looked up at the ceiling and smiled. "Nebraska," he whispered. Then everything went dark. The imperial palace of the Valorian sovereignty was the most amazing thing Jake had ever seen. It floated in space, a massive structure of living crystal that seemed to glow with its own inner light. The palace had been grown, not built, over 10,000 years. Its towers reached up toward the stars like frozen flames. Its walls shifted and changed color as Jake watched, moving through shades of blue and silver and gold. The ship carrying Jake docked at a platform made of something that looked like solid light. Guards in silver armor marched him through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were lined with statues of ancient rulers, each one carved from crystal that was older than human civilization. Their eyes seemed to follow Jake as he walked past. Everything here was designed to make visitors feel small. And it was working. Jake had never felt smaller in his life. Finally, they reached a massive set of doors that were at least 50 feet tall. They were covered in symbols that glowed and pulsed like living things. 2 guards stood on either side, their faces hidden behind helmets that showed no expression. "The Eternal Throne Room," one of Jake's escorts said. "The Emperor waits inside." The doors swung open without anyone touching them. Jake took a deep breath and walked in. The throne room was a vast dome of crystal that seemed to contain the entire universe. Through the transparent walls, Jake could see stars and planets and distant galaxies. The floor was made of something that looked like frozen starlight. And at the far end of the room, on a throne carved from a single massive gemstone, sat Emperor Kalen Veth Kale. The Emperor was ancient. His silver-blue skin was marked with patterns that seemed to move and shift on their own. His white hair fell past his shoulders. His eyes were the same deep violet as his daughter's, but they held no warmth. They were the eyes of someone who had seen empires rise and fall, who had made decisions that affected billions of lives, who had lived longer than most human civilizations. Standing beside the throne was Valeth. She wore formal robes of white and silver, and her face was carefully blank. But when her eyes met Jake's, he saw fear there. Fear for him. Lord Councillor Thion stood among a crowd of nobles and officials, looking very pleased with himself. Other Valorians filled the room, all of them watching Jake with expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust. The guards brought Jake to the center of the room and forced him to his knees on the cold floor. "You are the human who danced with my daughter," Emperor Kalen said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the entire room. It was the kind of voice that was used to being obeyed. "I am, Your Imperial Majesty. Do you know what the penalty is for touching a member of the royal family without permission?" "I have been told it involves something unpleasant." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some of the nobles looked shocked. Others looked angry. Thion's face twisted into a smile that was not friendly at all. Emperor Kalen leaned forward slightly. "You make jokes." In the eternal throne room, before the ruler of 400 billion souls, you are either very brave or very foolish. My mother always said I was a bit of both, sir. Silence fell over the room. The Emperor studied Jake with those ancient eyes. Jake did not look away. He was scared, more scared than he had ever been in his life. But he was not going to show it. If he was going to die, he would die standing tall. "Father," Velis spoke up. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the effort it took her to keep it that way. Jake Morrison did not know our customs. He meant no disrespect. "He's a simple cargo pilot who—" "Silence," Emperor Kalen said. The word was not loud, but it cut through the room like a blade. Valeth closed her mouth and looked down at the floor. The human knew exactly what he was doing, Thion said from his place among the nobles. He saw an opportunity to get close to the crown princess, and he took it. This was a calculated move designed to— "Lord Counselor," the Emperor interrupted. "I did not ask for your opinion." Thion bowed his head, but his eyes were still bright with anger. Emperor Kalen stood up from his throne. He was taller than Jake had expected. He walked down the crystal steps slowly, his robes trailing behind him like waves of light. He stopped in front of Jake and looked down at him. "Tell me, human, do you know why the Valorian sovereignty has survived for 12,000 years while other empires have risen and fallen?" "I do not, sir. Because we understand that those who rule must be set apart, sacred, untouchable. The moment the common people believe they can reach out and touch their rulers. The moment they see them as ordinary, everything falls apart. Order becomes chaos. Stability becomes destruction." Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. "With respect, Your Majesty, where I come from, we see things differently. Our leaders are chosen by the people. They serve the people. And any ordinary person can shake their hand or have dinner with them or, yes, even dance with their daughter if they are willing." The crowd gasped. Several nobles made sounds of outrage. Thion's face turned red with anger, but Emperor Kalen just smiled. It was not a warm smile. "You compare your little democratic experiment to the eternal sovereignty? Your species has been in space for only a few centuries. We were building empires when your ancestors were still living in caves." "I'm just saying that different does not always mean wrong," Jake said. "I danced with your daughter because she looked lonely. Because she was standing by herself at a party full of thousands of people and nobody seemed to care. I did not know she was a princess. I just knew she looked like she could use a friend." Emperor Kalen stared at him. Something flickered in those ancient violet eyes. Something that Jake could not read. "You speak boldly for a man whose life is in my hands. My mother always said that if you were going to go out, you might as well go out saying what you believe." The Emperor turned and looked at his daughter. Veela's careful mask had cracked. She was watching Jake with an expression that was part fear, part wonder, part something else that Jake did not have a name for. "I see," Emperor Kalen said softly. He turned back to Jake. "The law demands satisfaction. You have touched the sacred person of my heir. You have violated 10,000 years of tradition. There must be consequences." Jake braced himself for the worst. "Therefore," the Emperor continued, "you will face the trial of Valorous. If you survive, your offense will be forgiven. Your name will be cleared. You will be free to go. If you fail," he paused, "you will die." Valeth stepped forward. "Father, the trial has not been used in 500 years. It was designed for Valorians, not for humans. He cannot possibly. Then he will be the first outsider to attempt it." The Emperor's voice was final. There was no room for argument. "Take him to the preparation chambers. The trial begins at dawn." Guards appeared on either side of Jake and pulled him to his feet. They started to drag him toward a side door. "Wait," Valeth called out. She ran down from the platform where she had been standing. The guards stopped. "Let me speak to him, please. Just for a moment." Emperor Kalen watched his daughter with an expression that Jake could not read. Then he nodded once. Valeth approached Jake. Her violet eyes were bright with tears that she refused to let fall. "I will find a way to stop this," she whispered. "I will talk to my father." "I will." "Do not," Jake said quietly. "If you fight him on this, you will only make things worse for yourself. I knew the risks when I walked up to you at that party. Well, okay, I did not know these exact risks, but I knew I was taking a chance. You could die. Everyone dies eventually. At least I got a dance with a princess first." He tried to smile. "That is more than most cargo pilots can say." Valeth reached out and took his hand. The guards tensed, but nobody stopped her. "You are not like anyone I have ever met," she said. "Is that a good thing?" "I do not know yet, but I want to find out." She squeezed his hand. "Survive the trial, Jake Morrison. Come back to me." Then the guards pulled him away. And the last thing Jake saw before the doors closed was Valeth standing alone in the middle of the eternal throne room. Watching him go. The trial of Valorous was waiting, and Jake had no idea how he was going to survive it. Jake woke up slowly, like swimming up from deep water toward the light. The first thing he saw was a ceiling made of crystal that glowed with soft colors. The second thing he saw was Valeth, sitting in a chair beside his bed, asleep. He was in some kind of medical room. Machines floated around him, making soft humming sounds. His body was wrapped in bandages, and he felt weak in a way he had never felt before. But he was alive. That was something. He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. He coughed instead. Veela's eyes snapped open. For a moment, she just stared at him. Then a smile spread across her face, the biggest smile Jake had ever seen on her. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was thick, like she had been crying recently. "How long?" Jake managed to ask. 6 days. "The healers said you should have died. They said your injuries were too severe for any human to survive. But you kept breathing. Your heart kept beating. They are calling it impossible." Jake tried to laugh, but his ribs protested sharply. "That sounds about right." Valeth took his hand. Her fingers were cool and gentle, careful not to hurt him. "You did it," she said. "You completed the trial of Valorous. You are the first non-Valorian in history to survive. The first outsider ever. Everyone is talking about it. They do not know what to think. What about Thyern? He is very upset. Valith smiled in a way that suggested she was enjoying his frustration. He keeps telling everyone that there must have been some trick, some cheat. But there are recordings of the entire trial. Everyone saw what happened. Everyone saw you refuse to give up. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered the Guardian, the pain, the feeling that he was going to die. But he also remembered something else. He remembered deciding that dying on his feet was better than living on his knees. "Your father," Jake said. "What did he say?" "He wants to see you. When you are well enough." Valith paused. "He is different now. Something changed in him when he watched you fight the Guardian. I think he saw something he did not expect to see." "What was that?" "I am not sure. But I think he saw what humans really are." 2 weeks later, Jake sat across from Emperor Kalen in a private dining room. The meal was delicious, even though Jake could not pronounce the names of most of the dishes. They ate in silence for a while. Just an ancient emperor and a cargo pilot from Nebraska, sharing food like old friends. "You know," Emperor Kalen finally said, "when Thyern first brought you before my throne, I expected to see a foolish human who had stumbled into a situation he did not understand." "That is not entirely wrong," Jake admitted. "Perhaps. But I also saw something else. Something that surprised me." The Emperor set down his eating utensils and looked at Jake with those ancient violet eyes. "I saw a man who looked at my daughter and did not see a princess, did not see a political opportunity, did not see a path to power. You just saw Valith." Jake nodded. "She was lonely. Anyone could have seen that. Anyone could have seen it. But you were the only one who did something about it." Emperor Kalen leaned back in his chair. "I have ruled for 300 years. In that time, countless nobles and diplomats have tried to win my favor. They offered me wealth, power, alliances, everything they thought I wanted. None of them thought to simply be kind to my daughter. It was not a strategy, Your Majesty. It was just the right thing to do. And that, Jake Morrison, is why humanity is the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Jake blinked in surprise. "Dangerous? Your people are young. Your technology is primitive. Your lifespans are terribly short. And yet everywhere you go, you make connections. You befriend people who have no friends. You stand up for people who have no one to stand up for them. You do things that make no logical sense, simply because you believe they are right." "I am not sure that is a compliment. It is an observation." The Emperor's violet eyes held something that might have been respect. "The Valorian sovereignty has survived for 12,000 years by being careful. We calculate every risk. We never act without being certain of success. Your species launched itself into space before you had even finished fighting each other on your own planet. You should have destroyed yourselves a dozen times over. But here you are, and here I am," Jake agreed, "dancing with princesses, defeating ancient guardians, making my daughter smile for the first time since her mother died." Emperor Kalen stood up from his chair. He extended his hand toward Jake. It was a human gesture, something that surprised Jake completely. "The Valorian sovereignty would like to propose a formal alliance with Earth," the Emperor said. "Not as a political move, not as a calculated strategy, but as a gesture of genuine friendship. Because you have shown us something we had forgotten, that sometimes the best thing you can do is simply ask someone to dance." Jake stood up slowly, still a little weak from his injuries. He took the Emperor's hand and shook it firmly. "I think Earth would like that very much." In the weeks that followed, Jake Morrison became an unexpected ambassador. He was not trained in diplomacy. He did not know the proper way to address foreign leaders or negotiate trade agreements. Lord Councillor Thine was constantly frustrated by how often, Jake ignored the rules of proper behavior. But Jake had something more valuable than training. He was genuine. Other species began to take notice of humanity. The story of the cargo pilot who danced with a princess and survived the trial of Valorous spread across the galaxy. Humans became known not as primitives to be ignored, but as a people who acted with their hearts. Trade agreements were signed. Borders were opened. For the first time, humanity had a real place at the galactic table. And as for Jake and Valeth, they danced at formal dinners and diplomatic receptions. At small gatherings and quiet evenings alone, they found time to dance. It was their ritual, their reminder of the night when a lonely princess met a cargo pilot who treated her like a person instead of a title. One evening, as they waltzed beneath the crystal chandeliers of the imperial ballroom, Valeth leaned close to Jake. "My father asked me today what I want for my future," she said. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I want to see wheat fields that stretch to the horizon. I want to watch one of your sunsets. I want to understand what makes humans who they are." Jake smiled. "That can be arranged. Nebraska is not as fancy as all this, but we have cold drinks and wide open skies. It sounds perfect." And so, on a clear autumn evening, Crown Princess Valeth Sirenkale of the Valorian sovereignty stood on a hillside in rural Nebraska, watching the sun set over fields of golden wheat. Jake stood beside her, pointing out the constellations as they appeared one by one in the darkening sky. "That one is Orion," he said. "The hunter. And those 3 stars in a row are his belt. They are beautiful. Yeah, I spent my whole childhood looking up at those stars, wondering what was out there. I never imagined that one day, out there would come looking for me." Valeth took his hand. Her silver blue skin glowed softly in the fading light. "Thank you, Jake," she said. "For what?" "For asking me to dance. For seeing me. For showing me that the galaxy is bigger and more wonderful than I ever knew." Jake squeezed her hand gently. Somewhere above them, human ships sailed between the stars alongside their new Valorian allies. Somewhere, ancient civilizations were changing their opinions about the young species from the small blue planet. Somewhere, the universe was shifting in ways that no one could have predicted. But here, on a hillside in Nebraska, 2 people stood together and watched the light fade from the sky. His mother would come out soon, calling them in for dinner. Jake had already warned her that Valeth had never tasted fried chicken or apple pie before. His mother had taken that as a personal challenge. "Ready to meet my mom?" Jake asked. Valeth smiled. "I have faced the rulers of 100 worlds. I have survived political plots and assassination attempts and diplomatic crises. How difficult can one human mother be?" Jake laughed. "You have no idea." They walked down the hill together, hand in hand, toward the warm lights of the farmhouse. Behind them, the stars began to fill the sky, countless and beautiful and full of possibilities. He had asked a random alien woman to dance. He had not known she was royalty, and somehow, impossibly, wonderfully, that had changed everything. The end.